to another episode of Rendezvous with Muriel, the podcast to inspire you to go for your dream and become magnetic to people, opportunities, and even love. Today, I have the pleasure to interview someone that I met in person and that I really was intrigued by. So his name is John Jeffrey Lundell. He was born, raised, and educated in Minnesota and is retired from a 26-year career in international seafood business. Today, John works as a career strategist, relationship trainer, speaker, and author who helps individuals and organizations achieve their objectives through strategic relationship building. He is a certified independent color code trainer, providing training, mentor coaching, and targeted personality-related services. His unique approach, as found in his book, Get Beyond Your Troubled Past, incorporates mindfulness, self-awareness, sales principles, and personality theory. So good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning. I'm excellent. Happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here too, because I'm sure people are going to be benefiting from what you're going to tell us.
All right. Thank you. Yes. Actually, my journey to what I'm doing right now is quite long. I graduated from college in the early 70s, and I worked in the education field and in workforce development, and had a wonderful time doing that. But my little secret is that I always felt that I was a little too young for some of the work that I was doing, because I always worked with older people. Oh. And nonetheless, we think we did a good job. We did a lot of counseling with people, mostly in terms of career development. And in 1979, in the late 70s, I had an opportunity to kind of change that career path, and I went into the business world. Really didn't come out for the better part of 30 years. And, it was a very different type of work that I ended up doing than I trained for. But, that's been my experience in life, is that people do end up in some unusual places. And so that was a case for me. So I ended up working in Alaska, in the Bering Sea, based in Seattle, working in the seafood business. And it was a wonderful career because I had an opportunity to do a lot of different things. And I started off on the operational side and moved into purchasing, and eventually moved into sales and marketing, in which case I had a chance to travel around the world, primarily in Asia, and see a lot of things that I didn't think that I ever would have an opportunity to do. So when I retired from that in 2006, actually I moved to Nevada. And growing up in Minnesota, we're sun challenged, and so it's very nice to get to a place like Las Vegas where we have a lot of sun. And really had an opportunity to sit down and, now what do I want to do? And I ended up really returning to much of what I did as a younger man in Minnesota. And I worked in the Department of Corrections here in Las Vegas, Nevada Department of Corrections, on the reentry side, as people coming out of institutions. Prison, in this case, most of it was, some of it was work camp, but most of it was prison, reentering the workforce. And that was a really exciting opportunity because I could bring together all of my experience and help people get back on track. And from there, I went to work with the Salvation Army here in Las Vegas, managing the vocational training program there, and worked with a lot of folks that not only came out of institutional settings like a prison, but also coming out of a treatment, and as well as other very difficult life circumstances. So that was also very rewarding. And what I found was that my area, the area that I like most, is the soft skill area. And that is to say, helping people with people skills, communication skills, helping people to develop the attributes that they have. And we all have attributes, but so often we don't really get an opportunity to develop them. So that's really what I get a big kick out of. I really enjoy very much, is helping people to dig down and find those attributes, their strengths, and helping develop them, whether it be in a business setting or in a personal setting, to achieve their objectives. And that's what I'm been doing now for the last 7 years on my own, and I very much enjoy it.
Did you know as a younger man that you had some kind of talent to help people overcome their personality, overcome their story and their challenges? Because although you were trained, but it's not just anybody who can work with people in prison and these very tough circumstances.
Right, right. No, I didn't know that. As a young man, we don't know a lot of things. And but I also always knew that I had a way with people. I had a way to get along with most people. We always have challenges sometimes, but that I did know. And that was kind of a built-in confidence. I've never worried about communicating with people, connecting with people. And as I got older and I had more life experiences, and certainly working in the seafood industry that I did, work in Alaska, work in the Bering Sea, especially, it pushes people. And it gives us an opportunity to experience difficult situations, and pushes us to a limit to a certain degree because of the climate, because of the circumstances, and also working with people under extreme stress. And so that gave me further opportunities to kind of hone my skills. And I found when I got to the prison system that it was fairly easy for me to stay professional on the one side and yet empathetic and understanding the other side. And as I talk about it in the book, it's kind of compassionate, tough love is the approach that I have developed. And so it's that ability to connect with people, I think, that I've always had. And that just came about just by virtue of who I am.
Yes. And so I suspect, like you said, tough love, like when you work in this kind of environment, you have to be also firm, right? You cannot go like when you coach other kinds of clients where you can be a little bit gentler. Do you really have to put yourself in a position of knowing who you are and be strong in that in order for you to have an impact on them?
No, I think the most important thing is for me to be, authentic and true as to who I am. And that goes for all of us. Success comes when we can do it from the standpoint of our original true self. And again, my experience in the prison system, in a sense, the second time around, because as a young man, I also worked in similar situations. It was primarily jails, but not a prison. But I had more confidence, more life experience, and didn't have to prove anything myself. Because again, it's not about me, whether it's the current business that I have helping people achieve their objectives. It's about the other person.
Yes.
And in prison, it is all about helping that person to center and develop their attributes in a way that helps them move forward, as opposed to trying to be somebody that they're not. And this isn't something that happens overnight, but if we don't try to develop that and try to get to the point where that person is developing their own unique attributes, we'll never get there. So we make that attempt. And again, I think most people will connect up with that, and that helps because I can feel I connect with another person, but of course it has to be reciprocated. They have to accept me too. And in the prison system, for example, it's a wide variety of people. I would simply say not everybody looks like me in the prison system. So we have to overcome certain things, which has got to be based on authenticity. It's not power, it's not positioning. It's based on, being, as you say, being firm, but being positioned and being solid, I think is a way to look at it, and help that other person to say, okay, there's no problem here. It's not a matter of winning. It's a matter of helping helping that other person. And for me, it's all about, there's no limit to the number of people that we can help.
Yeah.
And so, there's no tally, there's no score. It's just being authentic and assisting others move forward.
Were you particularly sensitive to a cause, or to people who were less fortunate? I know you had experience working in jail with the inmate. I don't know, do you call that an inmate for jail? I'm not sure. But when you were younger, but was it something that was really moving your heart, or was it just life pushed you there?
I think that I've always had that tendency to seek equality, and knowing that, not everybody starts life in the same position, and having empathy with somebody who doesn't have the opportunity to move forward. And so I think I always had that to a certain degree. I mean, my degrees in college are in psychology, sociology, and education. They're all people skills, they're all soft skills related. And it's important to me that people be given the opportunity to move forward. But, the tough love comes in where, somebody is given repeated opportunities and doesn't do it. Well, we just move on to the next person, ready to come back to that person when they're ready. But, it has to be on a professional level. But empathy is something I think that we're in short supply of that these days, and people crave it, I believe.
We're not taught that, that's for sure. And
yeah.
So how does it work? Do the people who want to grow or change put a request, or how do you select the people you work with? Do you work in groups? Do you work individually?
I do both. For example, on the group side, frequently it's in a business setting, and there's typically, in all cases, there's a reason for wanting to explore somebody, so some activity from the outside. So I'm not part of the business. I am invited in because there's an issue. So, for example, it could be, which has happened, partners that are no longer getting along well. The business is doing okay. They've grown the business, but they've gotten to a point where, again, from a personality standpoint, they are clashing. And so my role is to come in and, through training, primarily through color code, although I use some other tools as well, is to help them go back, discover really who they are, and help them review their current situations through their core personality, in order to resolve the conflict so that everybody can get on with what they need to do, which is successfully running the business. At other times, sometimes it is to help people understand what their roles are. I have been brought into businesses to, in a sense, confirm what everybody's role is. And it's really kind of an interesting one where an owner or manager will say, okay, I have the team, and I'm not sure that everybody on my team is doing the job and is functioning in the role that best suits them. And so we go through a similar kind of training process to help people determine, what they're best suited to do. And I have been in situations where I've come in and gone through that training process and found out that, this organization was really set up well from the beginning, because pretty much everybody is doing what they should. On the other hand, there are times when it's obvious that some people are doing things, certain kinds of activities in the business, or the way that they're interacting with other people, that doesn't suit them, doesn't suit their core personality. I mean, when I have the opportunity to talk to a business owner prior to them hiring people, I say, of course, you have to look at the person's background, their experiences, et cetera, and look at the requirements of the job. But please hire to the personality once those other things have been determined. Don't just hire to the skill set. Don't just hire to the connection between this person's experience and the requirements of the job. Because unless you're working by yourself, which nobody does unless you're a day trader or something like that, you're working with other people. And so that becomes the big issue. I mean, it's kind of an old cliche is people don't quit the job, they quit their manager or they quit the organization because people couldn't get along or things weren't structured the way they should be in order for people to be efficient. On the other hand, as you mentioned, individuals, I certainly work with individuals. Usually the way that works is I literally introduce myself, hi, I'm John, and this is what I do, and listen and see what that person is trying to achieve. I like to set up my relationship with another person in terms of an achievement. So for example, a salesperson that is doing okay, but has hit a roadblock. They've gone as far as they can with their current skill set. Many times it's because they're trying to be a salesperson that they're not. Trying to be their boss or trying to be the trainer or trying to be somebody that doesn't really fit them. So my job is to say, okay, let's stop, let's roll back, let's find out who you are at your core level, and then take a look at those strengths and limitations that are typical for your personality type. And then to rearrange things so that they're working in association and in alignment with their strengths and not trying to be someone that they're not. And once we can achieve that, any type of personality really could be successful in a sales role. And so again, go back to the concept of an objective. What is it that the person is trying to achieve? Once I know that, then I can, help them to go back to find out who they authentically are so that we can achieve success and align them with their core personality. That's my objective.
So you're like someone who comes with your color code training, and you come and you have like a mirror that reflects to them their true self, the person that they really are without the mask and the thing they think they have to be, so that they can be empowered. Could you expand on the color code? Because I'm sure, like I didn't know about it, a lot of people have never heard about that.
Absolutely. So the color code is my primary tool. And again, just to reconfirm, I'm a soft skills trainer. So my orientation and my interest is on the people skills side. And so regardless of a training for a group or an individual, I always start with the color code, always. And that then helps, as I'll describe, helps that person determine who they really are. And once that's established, then it's a wonderful base to work together on a coaching or on a mentoring basis or on a straight problem-solving basis, because then I know what that core personality is all about. So what is the color code? The color code is a personality model, and it was developed by a PhD psychologist in California at the time. His name is Taylor Hartman. And Dr. Hartman taught it, I think he taught at Long Beach State, anyway, in the California system, and had his own practice. And like me, he's a few years older than I am. When he studied, he really, I think, had a lot of behaviorism as his primary model that many of the schools were using at that time. And so that's fine. So he moved forward and was into his practice by quite a bit and discovered that, some of these behaviorist kind of concepts don't work well with everybody. Certainly they work. And so he developed this color code. It's a rather eclectic approach. The interesting thing that he puts the pieces together in a very unique way. And the base model is based on motivation, which makes it different than some of the other models, such as Carl Jung's personality theories. It's based a lot on behavior, and the big tool that came from that would be Myers-Briggs, which is a very well-established, well-respected, a tool that I've used for years. It's based primarily on behavior measurement. And the color code differs in that the color code focuses more on motivation. And whereas some of the behaviorist models focus more on nurturing, where we start life as a blank slate, and the things that we learn determine who we become. Color code, it was more of a nature model, which says we are who we are from a very early age. In fact, perhaps even before we were born. And that means to have a driving core motive. And the colors, there's 4 colors, and I'll explain those. They are a metaphor for something much deeper. And one of the neat things about the color code is that you can take it as far as you want. You know, you can take it on a cursory level, and it's very helpful in understanding behavior, but we can go much deeper than that depending on the circumstances. So as I mentioned, it's based on core motivation, and there are 4 core motivations. The first one is a red personality, and the red personality is motivated by power. And you'll find that 25% of the population will be red. And those personalities kind of typical, or I mean, similar to the type A personality profile. Somebody that is driven by results, vision oriented, wants to get things done in the shortest possible way, doesn't have a lot of time to fool around. Those are all, in fact, attributes. You know, you want to get something done, you get a red and put them in charge of it, and it'll get done. Now, like all personality types, there's also the other side of the coin, you know. So many times on the limitation side, red personalities are a little hard for some of the other personalities to take because it's their way or the highway.
Yeah.
And they're very pushy and they move forward. The next personality is a blue personality motivated by intimacy. And that doesn't mean intimacy, necessarily interpersonal intimacy. It means intimacy in the sense that blue personality people get into things in a deep way. Ideas, people, concepts. Casual way of looking at things doesn't work for a blue personality. They're primarily interested in getting down and looking underneath the hood. And the blue personality is, as I say, intimacy is their big thing, but they are very, very, very detail-oriented, generally speaking. They love organization. They like things done the right way. So, for example, if you were to ask a red in an unguarded moment, what's the best way to do something? Red would say, my way. On the other hand, if you were to ask a blue, what's the best way to do something? Think about your auntie or your grandmother. The blue would say, the right way, right? We're all supposed to know that. So you get some wonderful characteristics with the blue. 35% of the population will be blue. On the limitation side, however, blues don't forget, and many times that they are, rather picky and judgmental and so forth. So, for example, if your sister is a blue and you had an argument with her in 1985 at Thanksgiving, this Thanksgiving you can bet that she'll still bring it up. That's that personality. The next is the white personality. The white personality is characterized by the motivation of peace. Their desire is to live a peaceful, stress-free life. And we call the white personalities the chameleons of the color code because they get along with everybody. You know, everybody, they can relate to people of other colors. And so they're many times a great negotiator. They're the person that can see everybody's point of view. On the limitation side, however, they're conflict avoidant. You know, they don't like to get in and stir things up. Many times procrastinators and so forth. So they are probably the whites in the group are the personalities that everybody just can't help but like. The last but not least, and by the way, the whites is about 20% of the population that would be white. And last are yellows, motivated by peace, by enthusiasm and fun. And so we joke around and say that many times here today and gone to Maui, those are the yellow personalities. But really, we all know yellow personalities, and these folks, you can have a big argument the night before with the yellow, and the next day it's pretty much forgotten, and it's, hey, John, good morning. It's a wonderful day, right? And if it's a blue and a yellow, the blue will keep on stewing and hanging on that, whereas the yellow moves on and it's no problem anymore, So we have 25% red, 35% blues, 20 and 20 on the white and yellow personalities. And that's pretty much across the board, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnicity or race.
So are there colors that are absolutely not compatible? Like you mentioned the blue and the yellow, for example. Or does it help to have somebody that is completely on the opposite side so that it harmonizes the relationship? How does it work?
Well, there are certain color combinations that seem to fit pretty well, you know. So, for example, many times a red personality and a yellow personality get along fairly well together. And certainly if it's in a person, most of us will have a primary color and a secondary color. Most of us will. On some rare occasions, you'll find somebody that is so strong in one area, 2/3 or more in one color, we simply say they're purists. They're all red, they're all blue, whatever. But most of us will have a mix. So for example, you know, within each of us, let's say I was a red and I had a secondary yellow. In a sense, that is assuming I'm a healthy person emotionally and mentally, that's the prescription for a fantastic leader. Because on the one hand, you've got drive and you have vision and you're moving things forward, but you also know how to have fun. And that's the type of personality that people love to follow. So if you can find that red-yellow personality, it's a wonderful leader type personality. See, the interesting thing about the color code is it's not only just between people, but it's also within ourselves, right? So we are not just one thing. So we may be a red and we may have a yellow secondary. And so we are a combination, just like this person here might be a red and this person here might be a yellow, and they too can come together and form a good working relationship. On the other hand, you might guess that two reds sometimes have difficulty because they have to figure out who's going to drive the bus, right? Right off the bat. So they're both going to want to control and drive the bus, and that's going to be an issue for people. And when I ask people, when we go through training or some familiarization with color code, I say, what do you think the most controlling color is? And most people will say, well, red, red. As it turns out, no, it's blue, because the blue is much more persistent. They're willing to run the long race. The red will get tired and just say, fine, do it your way. So really kind of difficult combinations of people are reds and blues because they're tussling to see who can actually control and who can, in a sense, drive the bus. But if you can come up with a combination of a red and blue, as many times you'll see a CEO, regardless male, female, doesn't make any difference, could be a red. It's almost a guarantee that their primary assistant, their executive assistant, will be blue, because it's the red that gets things moving. They have the vision. They're moving the organization forward, and they're not well suited for the details, keeping things in place, keeping the files in order, keeping all of the details that really run the organization are handled by, in a sense, the blue or those blues. So when you can find a red combination of drive and move forward with a blue combination, a red-blue combination, the blue takes care of the details, you have a formidable group. Whites pretty much get along with everybody, but again, remember, sometimes whites are procrastinators, as are yellows. So if you have a white and a yellow that get together, who's going to do the work and who's going to take care of the difficult things? So, again, you have to take a look at that combination of things. The interesting thing, though, is that people can learn the behaviors of the other colors. That's the key to growing. And that's, we really never change. We are always who we originally were. And I don't mean to say we pigeonhole people where they can't ever grow. That's not what I mean. I mean, you're always going to be the red that you always were. You're always going to be the white that you always were. But you surely can learn to augment your limitations by adding the strengths of some of those colors that are not native to you. And you simply borrow them, you utilize those behaviors when you need to, and then you discard them, when you don't need them. Many times when we do something that isn't suited to us, isn't suited to our personality. Even though we may be skilled in it, we may understand it, we may have experiences that support whatever behavior it is, it's not native to us. And so when a red needs to do a lot of yellow type behaviors, they get exhausted. They can't hold it for very long. So in terms of training, once we determine a person's core color, then it's examining these different pluses and minuses, strengths and limitations that they have, and helping that person to say, okay, this particular behavior set isn't native to me. I don't really like doing this. So for example, somebody who is had a difficult time making a decision, very indecisive, you know. So we help that person by saying, you know, you're always going to be indecisive, but you can learn to be decisive. But if you're always decisive 24/7, you're exhausted because it's not really who you are. So in situations, you learn to become decisive. You literally put on that jacket of decisiveness. You do those decisive things. When you're done with that, you take that jacket off and you hang it up in the closet, because you must remain true to who you are at the core. That's the kind of the challenge and the real beauty of the color code.
And now, if somebody undergoes a really strong trauma, for example, I don't know, I have the example of a red, for example, that would go and achieve something and then crash financially, for example, or crash in some way that it would be so traumatic that he would maybe hesitate to be himself later on in life. Do you see that a lot, that people would go first with their original native color, and then something happens and they subdue it and it stays under the surface, and that's why they're unhappy? Does that
Possibly
happen?
yes, indeed. So with the, as I mentioned, with each color, for example, a red, there's a list of possible strength characteristics that that person might have. Now, if I'm a red, I'm not going to have all of those characteristics. I'll have some, but not all. Conversely, there'll be a list of limitations. And many times what will happen is people will spend too much time, even though they're successful, too much time on the limitation side of the ledger. And so, as you say, they'll come to that point where there's a calamity or they'll crash. The way I see that, that's an opportunity for them to actually look at who they really are. Because
Yes.
I would suggest that they may not have been operating in an authentic way prior to the crash. So when the crash happens, it's like opening up the book. It's an opportunity to say, okay, here's a perfect moment to go back and look and see who you really are. And it may or may not be that person that you thought it was. And then examine those positive characteristics and certainly examine the limitations. And it's most likely the case that that person will discover on their own. They'll say, okay, I get it. I see right here is what I did. And I see this is what I didn't do enough of, and this is what I did too much of. So what happens many times if people are successful or moving forward, they don't see any reason to change, right? Everything's fine. You know, we're rolling. It's great. You know, I may have some difficult relationships, but that's just the price we pay for being successful until they're not. And the point where they're not is, you know, it's like the big lesson, right?
Yes.
It's we keep doing the same old thing until there's a reason why we can't do that anymore.
Unfortunately, we learn through pain way more often than we learn through joy. Yeah. And we get to a threshold where we cannot continue anymore. But when you are dominant, let's say here in this podcast, I did it so that people could follow their dreams. Mm-hmm. I guess the first stage before even starting anything would be to analyze which color you are so that you know how to take it, which under which angle. Or does it really?
Correct, right. And so I use, you know, in the best of all situations, if I had an opportunity to work with an individual over an extended period of time, this is exactly what we would do. The first thing is to go through the color code process to discuss, and the color code is really, there's 4 objectives. And the first one is to discover who you are. in order so that you can appreciate who the other people around you are, which then allows you to go back to you and get beyond yourself, get beyond that basic self, and only then can you grow. So discover yourself so you can appreciate others, so that you can then get beyond yourself and then set yourself up to grow. With that comes language and understanding and helping to identify other people in that person's life, whether it's personal or business. And that sets the foundation. That's kind of part one. Part two is to explore from a different angle that individual's talents and fundamental strengths. Now, it's similar to color code, but it's a little different tool, and we really delve into what this person is good at. And many times we say, well, I know what I'm good at, but it's been my experience in life that we know some of the things that we're good at, but not all. And so we explore that. And that doesn't necessarily mean talents or learned abilities and so forth. That just means things that you can do in life that other people have a more difficult time doing. So that's the second part. We explore that and we add that and layer that on the color code. The last part is really kind of exploring your deep core interests, in a sense, your passions. Yes. And to explore really what it is that makes you happy. The example I give there is, you know, you're happy when time stops with whatever you're doing. So if you're a stamp collector, for example, and you go into your stamp room and collect and work on organizing your stamps and cataloging them and so forth, and first thing you know, 4 hours have gone by and you can hardly believe it. Obviously, that's an indication that that's something that you really passionately love. And it's amazing, people don't examine that. This goes unexamined all the time. People just do things that they like or try to do things that they like, but they don't examine them. So for example, in the case, as the example that I use, a stamp collector, is it collecting stamps that the person really likes? Perhaps. Is it organization? Most likely. Is it the excitement of finding a rare stamp in this box? Yes, it's all of those things. So that's really important. So in the best of all situations, when we can find out who we really are at our core, what we're really good at, what our natural talents are, the subtle things in life, and what we really like to do. And we can put those three things together and apply it to almost any circumstance. In a business setting, absolutely. When somebody has reached a certain point, it's a great time to go back and re-examine those three things. Somebody that's re-entering the workforce, let's say having been out for a while, not necessarily out because they've been incarcerated, like my experience working in the prison, but maybe somebody that, maybe a lady, that has raised her children and the kids are old now and it's time to get back out and re-engage with her career. But a lot of things have happened in the meantime. It's a great opportunity. Go back, examine who you are at the core, examine what you're good at naturally, and examine what you really want to do and try to align with your next phase in life with those three things. It'd be wonderful if we could all start off at age 21 and have somebody walk into your life and say, before you do anything, John, what I'd like you to do is examine who you are at the core, and here's an interesting tool for that. I'd like you to examine what you're really good at, what your natural talents are, and they might not be what you think, and here's another tool for that. And now let's take a good look at what really makes John happy. And again, we need to look under the covers a little bit on that. And now let's align those three things as this 21 or 22-year-old person graduating from university, ready to head out in the world. Now you can say, I think this is the best path for me versus that path based on what I've learned about myself.
And I know in my coaching, I emphasize a lot self-love and joy, and really make sure that you do something in your life on a regular basis that nourishes you like this. Yes. So you mentioned the stamp collector, for example. When you go and examine your passions and you really realize what in your passions makes you happy, like the hunt, the organization, that gives you the opportunity to look for other things that could incorporate all that you could add into your life to bring you even to the next level as far as fulfillment. So
Absolutely.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes we are in a situation in our life where we can't just make a big change.
Yes.
You know, we perhaps already have a career, or we already have defined roles in terms of, you know, family and our obligations and so forth. But it doesn't mean that this kind of examination, which really falls under the category of self-awareness, you know, and becoming more attuned with who we really are, because there are times we can continue to do what we're doing and then find things to do
Yes.
outside of our normal daily roles that can bring us fulfillment. To me, happiness is more so being fulfilled and being engaged, as opposed to, you know, I don't know, we all have our definitions of happiness, but happiness is, you know, feeling that you have a place in life, and that you're engaging with life, and that you're part of it, as opposed to being on the outside trying to manipulate it or being manipulated by it. It's engaging and being a part of life. And I don't know, you know, how people can do that if they have no they have no sense of who they are as a person.
Yeah.
And the color code, as I use it, is a tool. You know, there are other tools. And in a sense, you know, the tool is secondary to the mission. The mission is to discover something about ourselves, that's self-awareness. And then to take a look at what we are really good at, because there's all around us, there's people that are really good at certain things and they're not doing them. In the business world, you know, you wonder why Mr. Johnson is doing this, because he's so good at that. But that's where he's focused, and that's what he's been doing. And he doesn't have, apparently, a way to examine and to get out of that particular path that he's in. So it's discovering self, and color code's a great tool for that. There are others. It's discovering our talents, and it's discovering what makes us happy. But the real key is aligning those. Not taking them separately, but aligning them, putting them all together. Because as I tell people, you know, the universe knows who you are.
Of course.
It always did.
Yes.
And in many cases, it's waiting for you patiently to discover who that person is. And maybe, you know, maybe they'll wait for your entire life, and that person may not discover that. But they might discover it. And the universe will say, you know what? Good. Now everything is going to move a little bit easier because you're more in alignment with how things were always meant to flow for you.
And actually, my own definition of self-love starts with knowing who you are and where you're tracking yourself. Where are you in your own way? Because that's what we do most of the time without realizing. And when you remove the blocks, all the rest becomes so much easier. That brings me to my next question, the question that I ask everyone. What is your definition of self-love?
Self-respect. That is my definition of that. Learning to respect ourselves. And the other thing is discovery. I mean, people who I think loathe themselves or don't really like themselves, they don't want to discover. They don't want to dig in. They don't want to dig down. So, you know, respecting yourself enough so that you can actually, you know, dig down and take a look at what might be there, what might always have been there. That is my, and of course, the other issue is, you know, it's manifested in how we treat other people.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, and so.
Much harder, people who are mean with others, they are even meaner with themselves inside.
Right, indeed, yeah. So, you know, in a sense, I would hope that we would all endeavor to be more, you know, color code white. You know, the personality that is motivated by peace and tranquility, not conflict and aggression. Not that that's not needed at times. You know, we do need to utilize those as human beings, but we need to, you know, modify that and use discretion. But again, back to your original point, is respecting oneself enough to discover and to dig deeper and find out who we really are at the core. Because none of us will ever get there, right? This is a process where you go through life
finished.
Yes. Yeah, it's not. It's
The
not
beauty
finished.
of it. That's the beauty of it, so that we don't have to be perfectionistic about it.
It's a process.
So respect yourself. I suspect that it's something that you're practicing with yourself and that is helping you in living your dream career, your dream, building your dream as you are doing right now.
Yes. Yeah.
And
One thing that's very interesting to me is, respecting self, but, I don't mean to, let's make that with a small r, we don't want to carry that too far. But it's also being comfortable with oneself, because when you're yourself, you can pause and you can listen and you can experience the other people that you come into contact with. Honestly, that's kind of the excitement of every day for me, is to meet other people and to, especially in a place like Las Vegas, where there's people from all over the world that are here for a variety of reasons. And every single day I meet people that I just sit back and be who I am and listen and inquire, and I'm amazed. I'm just amazed at what I learned, because there's so much diversity and so many different things that people are doing. So part of that too is having the ability to be comfortable with oneself, and again, it's not, I may not feel real good on Monday, but Tuesday might be better,
yes, but at the same time, when you're comfortable with who you are, with yourself, people feel it, and they lower their defenses, and that's
Yes.
when the interaction really becomes interesting, because people make themselves vulnerable. That's what I found, because they don't feel any tension in you.
That's right. And, here we are talking on, Zoom, so the digital platform that's allowing us to communicate, which is unbelievable by past years' standards. However, more and more and more digital things, in my judgment, means that people's skill level, as far as soft skills, people skills, interpersonal communication skills, continues to decline. And it requires practice. People need to interact with other people. And so that's a big part of helping someone is practice, because you'll take on a new behavior set, you need to practice it. And, practice in terms of face-to-face communication isn't as easy as it used to be, because people reach for the smartphone, look at the computer, and don't interact as much as they once did. And I don't think that we as human beings have gotten to this point, whatever it is, but we've gotten to this point, just having, done it secondhand, or kind of in a circumvent kind of communication way. We started off communication face to face, and it's only within the last 30 years or so that that's really started to change. So
Yes.
there's an issue there. That's a big concern to me.
Yes, to me too. And you were talking about practices. What in your life, what kind of self-love practices do you have incorporated? So, for example, what does it mean concretely to you to respect yourself? Is it to eat right? Or what does it mean to you?
Of course, it means discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And, I will only speak for myself. In this case, for me, I used to say, look at those Nikes over there. They're running shoes. They're kind of beat up, and I'd like you to meet my psychiatrist, because that's really what it always has been for me over the years. Is physical fitness and staying engaged. And these days, as I get older, I do more swimming and less of that jogging style things, But that is a big thing. There you get back to self-love, self-respect. If John doesn't do that and doesn't stay on that, it's hard for me to function and to do well otherwise. So that's the first order of business for me, is to exercise. And here in Nevada, simple things like remembering to drink a lot of water, very simple.
Yes.
But, we forget sometimes, and people are rolling down the road and they're exhausted, they're dehydrated, and they can't function, So for me, it's exercise, it's remembering to stay hydrated, to do my best to eat right and to take the supplements that have always helped me to stay engaged. Because I think, what's happening up here is largely a function of our physical being.
Of course.
And each of us has a way to do it. So for me, it's a discipline, and sometimes we do better than others. But that's it. That's the key, is to staying engaged, staying in an exercise mode. That helps me a lot.
Yeah, that's great advice. Now, if people want to find more information about you or contact you, where can they do that?
Yeah, I have two websites. One in relation to the book. The name of my book is Get Beyond Your Troubled Past, and that focuses on helping people with background problems, such as people who have been in prison or have trouble with drugs and alcohol and so forth. So that's that side of what I do. And that website is getbeyonditall.com, getbeyonditall.com. The other side of my business, the coaching side and so forth, is Success Partners Global. That's Success Partners with an S, plural, global.com.
Okay, great. And I'll put them in the description of the interview.
Terrific.
Before we conclude, do you have any last word that you would like to share with our listeners and our viewers?
Right. It's something I always say to groups when I have the opportunity, and that is that, hard skills may get you there, but it's the soft skills that will keep you there and help you move forward in the organization or in life.
Yes, so true. I want to thank you, John, for being interviewed today. That was a pleasure and very, very enlightening.
I appreciate it. Enlightening.
Yes, Franglish again.
Try me on French on that one, and we're going to have a problem.
And for our viewers and our listeners, I will have somebody new next week. And if you need to contact me, I'm a relationship coach. You can do so at datelikeafrenchwoman.com. And if you want to be interviewed, please reach out. I always love to discover people, like we were saying. Engaging with different people is the richness of life.
It is indeed.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. For questions or to apply for an interview, visit datelikeafrenchwoman.com.